The abolitionist movement was a movement to end slavery that took place from the 1830s until 1870. One of the main motivations for the movement was the Second Great Awakening, which was a religious revival that swept through the country starting in 1790 and lasting until 1840. The revival of religious beliefs inspired abolitionists throughout the country, especially in the North. One popular belief among abolitionists was the idea of gradualism, which was the belief that slavery had to be slowly eradicated from society. The American Colonization Society followed this idea. It wanted to take all of the escaped slaves and eventually send them back to modern-day Libya. This couldn't be done too quickly, though, because slavery had been an integral part of American life, and its immediate removal could cause an economic crisis. Among the most active abolitionists was William Lloyd Garrison. He was a leader in the American Colonization Society, who believed that the Constitution was a pro-slavery document that should be removed. He is also well known for being the author of The Liberator, which was a newspaper advertising abolitionist beliefs. A similar newspaper was the North Star, which later was also prominent in the fight for women's rights. Its motto sums it up well: right is of no sex, truth is of no color, God is the Father of us all, and we are all brethren. The North Star was written by Frederick Douglass, a fugitive slave who escaped at the age of 20. Douglass was also a lecturer for the American Anti-Slavery Society, which sponsored meetings, published propaganda, and strived to spread the word about the abolitionist movement. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott were other prominent abolitionists, especially because they were women. They became involved in the movement primarily after reading The Liberator and the North Star. Stanton and Mott both went on to be forerunners of the women's rights movement. Written rebellions occurred through propaganda, but there were also physical rebellions, such as the Nat Turner Rebellion. Nat Turner was a slave who, after seeing visions for God, went from door to door in Virginia with other abolitionists, killing all white people they came in contact with. Their followers accumulated, totaling around 60 members, and in the end, around 55 white people were killed. Shortly after the Nat Turner Rebellion, the Kansas-Nebraska Act occurred. It allowed states in the West to decide through popular sovereignty whether or not they wanted to allow slavery. This contradicted the Missouri Compromise and angered many abolitionists. The Kansas-Nebraska Act added fuel to the flame of abolitionism. The Dred Scott trial became a result. In the case of Dred Scott versus Stanton, Scott was an escaped slave who fought for rights as a citizen. Unfortunately, the result of this case was that African Americans were not considered citizens, and therefore were not allowed due process of law. This was the first case since Marbury versus Madison that the court declared an act of Congress unconstitutional. The Free Soil Party was in the mid-1800s and was led by former members of the Whig Party. It opposed the expansion of slavery into newly acquired Western lands on the premise that free men on soil was more immoral than the idea of slavery. The Fugitive Slave Act was another blow for the abolitionists. It required anyone with knowledge of fugitive slaves to report them and return them to slavery. It was illegal to help escape slaves, and it was nullified in many northern states because it was unconstitutional, but it was still implemented in the South and angered abolitionists. All throughout the time that this was occurring, slaves were working hard to gain their freedom. The Underground Railroad was a system that secretly smuggled slaves north to freedom. Harriet Tubman was an integral member of this process. After escaping herself, she returned numerous times to help other slaves. The Underground Railroad was one way that the abolitionist movement ultimately was a success. The abolitionist movement dared our nation, which was founded on the principle of equality, to redefine their skewed vision of equality by extending it to all people, not just white males.